Okay, it's time to get started. We still have a few folks joining us. Uh, that is correct. We are pretty big compared to Rhode Island. We have a few folks still joining us, so I'm going to give everyone about 30 more seconds. And then in the interest of, being respectful of everyone's time, because time is precious, I know for sure as a teacher that is the case, we will get started. Okay. We are going to go ahead again for the purpose of time. We are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome. We are so happy to have you. This is your Formative Advanced webinar. All right. We are going to get right into the work. The first thing I would like to have you guys do, if you have not yet already done so, is I would like for you to go ahead and log into your Formative account. So I'm going to give you a few moments where you can go ahead and do that. Just go ahead and click the login button and access your account, and then we will get started. Go to www.formative.com. All right. While you guys are doing that, I'm just going to introduce myself. I was already talking to some of the folks who joined us a little bit early. But my name is Sarah Hall. I am a success manager here at Formative. I spent 7 years in the classroom. I am secondary ELA certified, and I am coming to you from what I consider to be the cold neck of the woods here over in Connecticut. So I am bundled up. What are we going to be covering today in our session? This is an advanced webinar, so we are going to be looking at creating content blocks. We are going to be creating a mini lesson in teacher pace mode. And we are going to be looking at how do we give delayed feedback to our students. What are some things you need to know before we get into it? Well, this webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted at the training center so that you can access it later. I do like to mention that because there's going to be a lot presented in a short period of time. And the goal of today's webinar is not for you guys to leave here as experts, but instead to leave here with like a familiarity of what are some of the capabilities of Formative and what are some of the advanced features that we can offer to you. If you need to reference this webinar, it will be posted for you later though. We're going to be together for about 30 minutes. I don't anticipate the content portion taking that long. We might have a few minutes left over at the end. So if there are questions that I'm not able to answer as we go, we will certainly use that last bit of time to address any unanswered questions. But we all are a smaller group, as I mentioned earlier. So if you have any questions while we're going through this, feel free to type them in the chat and I will address them as we go. And anything that I'm not able to get to, we can touch base with at the end. One of the things I did want to mention though, is that I do have a feedback survey that I will give you at the end of this. So before you jump offline at the completion of our webinar, I will post that in the chat. Make sure you click into that and complete that for us, okay? All right, let's go ahead and get started. Since this is an advanced webinar, I'm not going to take a ton of time doing the basic features. You guys should know at this point, and I'm sure you're all familiar, this is your dashboard, okay? We're going to jump right into creating a formative and looking at how to make content blocks. If at any point I'm going too fast and you have a question, again, feel free to ask. So in order to create a new formative, you're going to click this plus new formative in the upper left-hand corner. I do like to always touch base on this where you put the title here in the instruction block, because as teachers, our days get really busy and it's really easy to walk away from what we're doing and then try to come back to it later. And if you're not in the habit of titling your formatives right away, what will happen is you'll end up with a bunch of untitled formatives. It'll be really hard to find it later. So I just like to get in the habit, just like we tell our kids to write their names on their paper right away, to go ahead and title it. And then, just put the date. I can't type here. Sorry, guys. It's a typing and talking thing. All right. So you would just put the date in or whatever your assignment is or whatever the case may be. Also, by clicking the arrow here, you can add instructions. So these instructions can be as robust or as simple as you like. So I like to just answer the questions. Okay. And then by clicking the arrow, the upward arrow over here, it goes away and we can start adding our questions. So let's go ahead and do that. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a content block. Your content items are any of these items here in the left. I'm going to start today by just showing you a video content block. But what I'm going to show you, the same logic applies to any of those content items on the left in red. So it's always going to work the same way. So you can see you have some different options on how you add your video here. You can record, you can upload, or you can copy and paste. Like if you have a link from YouTube, you can just copy and paste the link in here, which is what I'm going to do. You'll see it'll kind of give you like a little preview, and you click add video. And here you can see now your video is pinned to the left side of this content block. Okay. Now, one of the newer features, which I'm not going to get into necessarily today, but I at least want to make you aware of it if you weren't yet aware of it, is that we now have the ability to add questions to different timestamps in the video. So let's say you have different checkpoints. Maybe one is at 42 seconds. You just toggle the little slider over and you can add a question by hitting add item at whatever timestamp you want. So play around with that. It's really cool. It allows you kind of like do check for understandings throughout, which is really, really good. For the purpose of what we're doing today, though, I want my students to see all of their questions populate the moment they look at this particular content block. So I'm going to add my questions at the 0 minute mark. Okay, that just makes sure that they populate right at the beginning. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do a multiple choice question. And I just want to make sure that my students are with me and that they're engaged. And I'm just going to put in here, what is this video about? Okay. And you guys know one of the great things about Formative is that we can add an answer key so that we can have Formative do grading for us, as much of the grading for us as possible. So I'm just going to add some answer options in here so you can see how that works. And I'm going to mark the correct answer so that way there I don't have to, use my time to grade this work later. I'm going to go ahead and add another question. This time I'm going to add a free response question. And you can see it just adds right to the same content block, which is really, really nice. And I want to understand going into this, how comfortable do my students feel with percentages? I'm not going to add an answer key here because it's not something that necessarily has a right or wrong answer. And then I'm going to add one more question to my content block. And this is going to be, what do you like about math? Okay. So now, if you want to see what this looks like from the student view, you can just go up to this little eyeball in the upper right-hand corner, and up pops your student view. Okay. And so you can see your videos loaded on the left-hand side, and then to access the questions, they're on the right and they toggle or they scroll through, okay? What's great about this is that the questions always stay attached to the video. So that way they're like the resource, so to speak, that your students need to answer and to do the work stays right there and it's always available to them. As I stated before, sorry, I have a second screen here that I'm trying to see. As I stated before, the content block, the way this looks and feels, it's going to work the same for any of these red content options. So I encourage you, when you have a moment, play around with it a little bit and see how it works best for you. Okay, it looks like we are good. So the next thing I'm going to show you is teacher pace mode. Teacher pace mode is really cool because it actually allows, it turns Formative from like an assessment platform into like a lesson facilitation platform. And as if you're anything like I was in the classroom, I basically lived off of my PowerPoint slides. I would create my lesson. Those would be my talking points. I'd engage with students on that. Teacher pace mode allows you to control the pace of the content that your students are seeing and engaging with based on what you want them to see in that given moment. So it basically eliminates the, you're going over the thing in slide 2 and one of your students is going over, raising their hand to ask a question about slide 12. It's like, we haven't gotten there yet, right? This basically eliminates that. So let me show you how we're going to do that. In order to do this, though, I'm going to add one of my slides, one of my slide decks, and I'm going to do that from my Google Drive. So I'm going to click on my Google Drive. I don't know if you saw how I did that. Give me 1 second. Let me go back. I clicked on it, upload your own content, enhance PDF, Google Docs, so on and so forth. And then I'm going to pick something from my Google Drive, select the account that my drive is linked to, and I'm going to go and upload. This is just basically the presentation that I'm showing you guys today. It's going to load. It's going to take a few moments depending on the size of the file. So just give it a second or two. And then it's going to basically show you all the slides, and it's going to say, you have 8 images. You're going to go ahead and select to add them. Okay. And you can see now each slide has essentially been made into its own content block. So I can add questions that attach to each individual slide. Okay. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's keep this simple. So my first one is going to be a short answer question. And my question, I just want to know and get a better understanding for what is it that you teach? So I'm going to put that there. And my next is going to be a free response. And maybe I want to know, what is your favorite subject? I think we all might be a little biased, right? It's like, of course, my favorite subject is a subject I teach. All right. So these would be the questions that perhaps I want to tie to this particular slide. And then maybe in this slide, I want to add a short answer question. And I want to understand, what are your homework habits? And so maybe I ask the question, do you do your homework right when you get home? Okay. So now I've created, I know it's a very basic formative. It's a very basic teacher pace mode. I've created my, my content blocks. I've added my questions, but now I just want to get rid of the rest of these slides because I don't necessarily need them. So I'm just going to click in the triple dot menu in the upper right-hand corner, and I'm going to click delete. And then I'm going to go ahead and delete each slide. I think I just saw a question pop up. The question is, can you see live student answers in this mode, such as who hasn't answered and who has? Yes, great question. I'm going to show you what that looks like because I'm going to give you guys a chance to try this. But that's a great question. So again, if I just want to delete these, I go through, I delete them. Give me 1 moment. Okay. So now we've created our lesson in teacher pace mode. It's time for us to go in and assign it. And so we're going to assign this pretty similar to how we would assign any activity. You guys, excuse me, I am just getting over a cold. You guys are going to assign it to your classes, but for the purpose of this, I'm going to assign it to you guys as a guest student because that generates like a code where you guys will be able to access this. I do not recommend you use the guest student login, or excuse me, the guest student assign option for your own students because it's a one-time use thing. Once you've picked the class or classes you want to assign to, you're going to go down and you're going to have the option to assign it as a teacher pace mode and assign optional settings. So I'm going to click on optional settings so that you guys can see what happens when I turn teacher pace mode on. I'm going to toggle teacher pace mode on, and I'm going to lose some control over some of these assign settings, and it's totally intentional. Don't worry about it. You can see now I only have a handful available. And for the purpose of this, I'm actually going to change one of my assign settings here to return scores when closed. And I'll tell you why I chose to do that in a minute. You hit assign. And you can see now that I have the start screen. I am sorry. That's it. Students cannot access this until you give them permission to do so by hitting start. Now I'm going to need a cough drop. Let me mute this for 1 second so you don't hear me opening that. Okay, so we have some folks joining us. This is might feel a little tricky for you, simply because if you don't have multiple screens, you're going to need to be listening to me on one and doing the teacher pace mode assignment in the other. But if that's too much and you just want to listen and take it all in, can't see the link. I didn't post the link. I posted the join code in the chat. You would put, it's the same join code that's right here. You would put the join code in your formative. I will show you what that looks like. Right here where it says quick code. Okay. All right, so I'm going to hit start on, you're welcome. I'm going to hit start on my teacher pace mode activity. I get a little countdown, and you can see the only thing you have access to right now are the instructions. When I hit next, now you will see that you're starting to have access to the content that I'm allowing in front of you based on what I'm doing. So go ahead, take a few moments and start working through this activity. Wrong answers are encouraged. You don't need to watch the video, but I just want you to see how this works. You can see if you have your screen split, some folks are starting to see answers, or excuse me, some folks are starting to enter answers and we're seeing results. This goes back to the question we had from earlier about, can you see real-time answers? You absolutely can. And for the purpose of time, I'm going to move on. If you're not done, don't worry, but you're going to see how I now have control to move you to the next part of the lesson. So I hit next in the upper right-hand corner here, and now you have access to the next set of questions. Okay? Don't worry, you have full control over this. If you go too fast and students are like, wait, I need you to go back, you can always hit previous, and you have complete control of this. Okay, pause what you're doing for 1 moment so I can show you a couple of other features before we move on. You do have the option of pausing this at any point. So I'm going to hit pause. At this point, nothing can happen. When you're ready to resume, you can hit unpause and just put it right back on the content block that you were working on before you decided you needed to pause it. The other thing that you have control over here is, let's say you've used your teacher pace mode to facilitate your lesson, and that was like your group activity. Now you want to do more of like an independent practice, and you have the last half of your formative that you created that you want that you want students to work through on their own. You can always go to the upper right-hand corner where it says end session and choose to switch to student pace mode. And when I do that, you will see that now you have access to the entire formative, just like you would in like the more traditional sense, where you have access to all of the content and all of the questions at one time. So I'm going to give you guys a few moments, continue to work through the formative. Again, don't stress out about right answers. Wrong answers are encouraged. And then I'm going to show you guys how to give a little bit of feedback. So go ahead and work through that the best you can, and then we will come back together. All right. Based on this, it looks like folks have answered the questions. So for the purpose of time, I am going to keep moving. Before we get into giving feedback though, are there any questions, additional questions on teacher pace mode? If a student is in the middle of answering a question, does it automatically submit what they wrote so far? Do you mean like when you progress through the assignment? If it's live, just like any other formative would be, if that answers the question. If that doesn't answer the question, please You can either go ahead and type it in the chat, or you can clarify your question through the question and answer feature. I also have a hand raised. If that's an additional question, feel free to drop that in the chat. But it functions otherwise, other than you controlling the pace, it functions just like a traditional formative would. All right, so let's look at giving some feedback. As you guys know, you have the option to view the totals page, which is the high level responses that you got from your particular formative, or you have the option to drill down into particular question types. Let's go ahead and look at giving feedback here. So I want to give feedback to this one particular student. You guys all got this question, right? So I'm just going to pretend like, I want to give this one-off piece of feedback. Formative now has the option to give delayed feedback, which was highly requested and something that teachers really said would benefit them, whether it be because they didn't want to interrupt students in the middle of their work, or they just were trying to preserve, test integrity, whatever the case may be. Highly requested, so we heard you, and we gave this as a feature to you. You have the option when doing feedback to send now, that's your live feedback, or when the assignment is closed. So you're going to click that. That will enable you to give the delayed feedback. So maybe I just want to put something as simple as nice job. Okay, and I'm going to hit send. You can see it says here, it is only visible with return scores. Okay, and so now in order for that feedback to be delivered, I have to go through, do whatever I'm going to do to the assignment as the teacher, and I'm going to close it. When I close it, that is when my feedback will be delivered to my students. Now, how do you close it? There's a number of different ways that you can close your assignments. Basically, what you want to look for is this little lightning bolt here. Anywhere you see the lightning bolt, you can close the assignment. So you hit the lightning bolt, you go to adjust settings. You can toggle the toggle here to move it to closed. Another place you can do it is up here in the assign options. You can move the little toggle over to closed here. Or the last place you can do it is you can do it from your, you can do it from your dashboard, the little lightning bolt here, adjust settings, and then you can opt to have it closed. I'm actually going to close that out. Close it, and I'm going to go back into my responses. And when I go back here, you can see now that my feedback was sent a minute ago when I had closed it. Okay, I see another question coming through. If the assignment isn't closed, but the student submits it and gets a score, can they see it or only when closed? It depends on your assign settings. Okay, so that is when you go over here to your assign settings. Let me show you. These are all things that you have control over in your assign settings. Okay, I can include a link when we're done to how the different assign settings, what they control. But yeah, you can, if you don't want students to see scores, you can set an assign setting to have them do that. Okay, if that answers your question, awesome. If not, please let me know, and I can make sure I clarify that further for you. But I will look for that help article for you. All right. Well, we are just about at time. We only have about 3.5 minutes left. I do want to just point you to where you can find additional resources. You can access, if you're online making your formatives, creating your lessons, and you have questions in the moment, you can always go to our little bubble with the question mark in the upper right-hand corner to access our help center. If you click on Help Center, you'll have access to tons of resources and articles to help walk you through anything that you might need. You can access our community center, our video tutorials. You can even request features. We hear you when you request your features, guys. That is how we keep making our platform stronger and stronger. So absolutely feel free to request features. You can also contact Formative support. They are amazing. It's not a live chat per se, but we do have people that work those inboxes to make sure you're getting a response within 24 hours. But I will say typically it is much, much quicker. Let me drop the URL for the survey in the chat. There is the link for the survey. Please go ahead and click into that before you transition out for today. That is all I have for you. Please feel free to stay for the last couple minutes and ask questions. If not, you are free to transition out. I'm going to look for that article, that help center article for you, though, about the assigned settings. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good one. I hope I was able to answer all of your questions. Please take a moment to fill out the survey. And we look forward to having you back into another one of our webinars. You can go ahead and transition out whenever you're ready, guys.